Alright, peace and greetings YouTubers. So welcome to another edition of In the News. Let's just jump right into it. I want to start with some music topics really quick. So I got a chance to go to the Alicia Keys concert the other night, and listen, can I say, I was pleasantly surprised. I did not expect for the show to be that good. When I tell you I wasn't ready, like Miss Keys, I was not ready. It's to the point where if she were to come back tomorrow, I would go to the show again. It was that much fun. It was such a great show. Just some quick backstory. I live right by the arena. So a lot of times I'm walking to get coffee or something, and I'll always see the advertisements for who's coming to town, right? And so there's something about living by the arena that makes you just want to go to every show that comes. But anyway, I was talking with my friend, and we were debating about whether or not we were going to go. And it was to the point where we were on the Ticketmaster app, and we were like selecting the seats, you know, hitting them little blue dots, and okay, section this, that. All right, and it was right before it was time to pay, and it's like, all right, so you sure you want to go? Like, because we weren't sure if we wanted to go. Like, you want to go? Well, I don't know. You know, you start digging through the songs that you like of her. It's like, okay, well, she got a few songs I like, but I don't know. It's gonna be 2 hours of ballads and a piano. I don't know. It's the summer. We trying to cut a rug a little bit, you know, cut a step, turn up a little bit. I don't know. Let's sleep on it and see how we feel when we get up. So when we got up, the answer was no, we ain't going. Right? And so 18 minutes before the show, something hit me, and I was like, you know what? I want to go. I'm telling you, it's something about living by the arena. It's like a magnet. It's like, must go to show. It don't matter who it is, because I'm one step from buying Aerosmith tickets, too, because they about to be here in September. It's the farewell tour. I want to go just to say that I've seen them. But anyway, I get to the show, and I'm sitting right next to the parents of, there's an artist named Missy who actually just got off their own tour. They had just performed at, I don't know if it was the Anthem or one of these spots out here in DC, and Echo Stage. And so they had, you know, Alicia just performed over there like the other day. So randomly, I'm sitting next to his parents, and we're sitting here having this great conversation about music and life and artistic vision and all this other stuff. And I'm telling them about a few things I've done here and there. And so, you know, the show kicks off. And when I tell you, like, one, she sounded amazing. Like, she sounded really good on every song. I almost had to check to see if the mic was on, because I'm like, Alicia, this you? Like, I mean, the girl was singing. She was singing, right? And, like, the band was just amazing. The background singers were really good. The musicality of the show just, I mean, it was an entire event. She has the stage in the middle of the arena on the floor, so everybody circles around. So the stage is, like, right here, and then it extends out to the sides. So there's not a bad seat in the house. It didn't matter where you sat. You had a good seat. I had some pretty dope seats. I was in the 100 section, and so it's kind of like I'm level with the stage, and so she was like right there to me. But I mean, man, but let me tell you what the biggest takeaway was with this show. I had no idea that white people go so hard for Girl on Fire. Like, I had no idea, right? You kind of underestimate the different audiences Alicia has. Of course, she has the R&B cohort of fans, but that adult contemporary crowd and that pop audience, that's an unmatched group there, because I was not ready. Like, listen, as soon as them chords came in for Girl on Fire, and this was towards the end of the show. She has like the ending of the show where she does like the No One and Girl on Fire and not Something in Common, that's Bobby and Whitney, In Common and Empire State of Mind and, you know, some other songs like that. And so as soon as those chords came on, when I tell you these folks like they started jumping up and screaming, high-fiving, and, you know, they get the phone and FaceTiming family members and turning so they can see the stage so people can see the, I'm like, I had no idea this song went off like that. Because, you know, for me, when I think of Alicia, you know, the songs that come to mind for me are all of the, you know, the You Don't Know My Name. Mainly because she's like, you know, can I talk to Michael? And, you know, that's my real name. I'm like, what's up, Alicia? How much you need now? You know, so You Don't Know My Name, Fine Got You, A Woman's Worth, Teenage Love Affair. You know, those are my Alicia songs right there. You know, Unthinkable. You know, those are the ones for me. So Girl on Fire was cool, but at the time that it was out, I think because she performed it at every award show, every nighttime show, every daytime show, I was like, man, this girl been on fire. When y'all gonna where is the water? Because, man, she been on fire for like 6 months. Like, that song would not die. And I just remember being at BET Honors, and because I was a seat filler, and they're like, oh, we have a special performance from Alicia Keys. And almost everybody in there was like, oh, please don't let it be Girl on Fire. But fortunately, she did Brand New Me, and that was a really great performance too. But, man, I mean, these folks were in there just going so hard for this song. It was like Sweet Caroline up in there. I was not ready. I had no idea. So lesson learned. Like, they go up for that song. And then it's crazy. Even when she did Empire State of Mind, they love that one too. But I'm not gonna lie, she killed that. I'm not even from New York, but man, by the time that song was done, I was happy to be from Brooklyn. Like, it was such a fun show. And I love the encore. I'm not spoiling it. You just got to go to the show and see what the encore was. But Amazing show. The musicality was so good. I love the band, the background singers. I don't know who the woman was that was her main background singer, but that girl had pipes for days. Like, she could just, every note, the way some of these singers can just pull notes out of nowhere. I'm like, how do you do that? And then sustain it with the resonance. I'm like, go ahead. So, excellent show. So, if Alicia comes to your town, definitely check it out. And the other thing, too, Alicia knows how to work a crowd. Like, I really thought she was about to just be sitting on that piano for 2 hours and, I was going to be ready to go halfway through the show. But no, I mean, she had that crowd on their feet once it was time to crank up a little bit. She has her moments where they slow things down and make it very, sensual and melodic. But when it was time to crank up, she knew how to crank up. So I enjoyed it. But listen, Girl on Fire, clearly that is her Rhythm Nation for white folks, because they went hard. I did not, she could have had pyrotechnics at that point. Because, man, they went hard for it. Anyway, also Missy Elliott, shout out to her from her performance with Essence. That was really, really dope. I don't know if you guys got a chance to see it. For the last 2 years, Essence has been showing or doing the live stream of the concerts on Hulu. And so I got a chance to watch a lot of the performances. I got a chance to see some of Lauryn Hill. I saw Jill Scott was amazing, of course. I know folks are pissed they don't like her version of the national anthem. My thing is, get over it. Because the entire Essence theme was like celebrating 50 years of hip hop and everything. And so, I got to see a lot of the acts that were there. But Missy, I have to say, that was a really, really dope show. The dancers, shout out to the dancers she had. I think sometimes the dancers don't get the accolades they get, but the kind of choreography and the execution and the stamina that those dancers had to have for the kind of show that they put on was amazing. I was like, man, it made me miss like dancing. I was like, dang, maybe I should get back into it. But that was an amazing show. Missy knows how to keep you engaged. And mind you, this is like 1:30 in the morning when it's airing. So everybody, you already have sleep because it's live, so you're trying to stay awake. But man, she kept me awake as soon as she got on the stage. Like, Missy gave a great show. I don't know if she plans on doing any tours or residency, but she definitely should do something. I think people are missing out from her live shows. But that was an excellent show. So shout out to Missy. Shout out to just that catalog and just all the hits. She couldn't even cover all the hits because she had so many. Like, when you think about her specific, singles and everything as an artist, and then what she also produced for everybody else, it's like, man, that pen and that creative game it's no joke with Missy. So that was a dope show. I hope she gets everything she wants for Christmas. That was really dope. Somebody had me laughing because I've been pressed about this, but now we have an answer. Shifting over to Drake. So if you've seen the clips from Drake's show, there's a portion where it looks like he's on the couch with a hologram of his younger self, and then the hologram passes him like that notebook. Man, when I tell you I spent like 2 hours trying to examine and see, is that a hologram or is that a real person? I'm like, that gotta be a real person, because a hologram is a hologram, but how does the book turn into a real book, from a hologram? Because it was like, it's an actual person. So apparently it's a lookalike that just looks like a younger version of Drake. I was like, okay, because I was starting to rip my hair out trying to figure this out. I'm like, I know I'm not losing it here. Like, that can't be a hologram, because how did the book go from hologram to real? I was really like studying this thing. Now, if I was Drake, I wouldn't have said nothing. I would have just kept it up to the imagination of everybody. Build the suspense. You know what I mean? I haven't got tickets to that show yet, but I'll probably get it. I spent too much money on concerts this year, so I'm trying to cut back. But man, I feel like I've seen everybody this year. And so yeah, I love me a good concert. That's all I'll say. Anyway, moving right along. Alright, so this next story I'm kind of on the fence with. Like, I think it could be a good idea, but I'm not sure about the execution at the moment. And so it's being reported that ComicView is making a return. And I think that's a great idea to an extent. Like, I love ComicView. Like, thinking back, when you think about shows like ComicView and Def Comedy Jam, these were shows that gave a platform to a lot of people who were still kind of climbing up in regards to comedy. And it gave a lot of, exposure to homegrown acts and everything, which was really dope, because now they're on a national stage. So people you've never heard of, you're seeing them on your TV and they're making you laugh. And again, a lot of times when people are really hungry for it, because again, these are folks that are hungry for it. They haven't really had the big breaks yet, so they got to really give it their all. They had some really great comedians back in the day. You would get a good, great laugh. Like, even the theme song went in. Remember the Comic View on BET, coming at you 6 nights a week, get your laugh on, hey, and you want to get your laugh on, yeah, get your laugh on, baby, when you're down and out and you're feeling blue, tell me who you turn into, Comic View, ooh, ooh. Like, that was a time. But anyway, so I was looking, I was like, okay, this is going to be great. But then when I was looking at the details, who's all going to be in this, so Kevin Hart is the one that's kind of organizing this partnership with the show. But the lineup of some of the people on here, let me see here, they have Tommy Davidson, Takara Williams, Tony T. Roberts, Brescia Webb, DC Young Fly, and rapper T.I. All right, I'm gonna say this. I have no problem with the people that are featured, but my thing is, I think ComicView, again, like I said, worked because you got people that nobody had ever heard of. People know who all of those folks are. Like Tommy Davidson, in my opinion, is, you know, he's in that legendary status because he's from that earlier era. Like to the point where he used to even, I think he was a host at some point on the show. But like DC Young Fly doesn't need additional exposure because he's on Wild 'N Out. He's doing national tours. Everybody knows who he is. T.I., don't even get me started. Like, first of all, side note, remember that time I told y'all there was a rapper at my mom's house this one time? Okay, it was T.I. Like, it was the craziest thing. So my parents, when I was coming up until around the time my younger brother was born, my parents were always taking care of other people's kids. So we always had some teenager in our house, somebody who got in a fight with their parents, and they got sent to our house so they could, you know, become a better person. So my parents were always taking care of somebody. And so one of the girls that my parents helped to raise, when she got married, her husband is apparently a really good friend or childhood friend of T.I. So there's this random day, right? My mom FaceTimes me. She's like, you know who this is? And so she, you know, posts the phone because I'm thinking, oh, okay, it's somebody I must have went to church with back in the day. And I look, I'm like, it's T.I. And mind you, at the time, I had just done a video lighting T.I. up. Okay, this was back when he was talking about, you know, bragging about, oh, making sure his grown daughter was still a virgin and he would take her to the clinic and stuff. So I had just did this whole video on like agency and all, lit him up. So I was like, oh, I hope he ain't seen my video, because but like I'm looking and and Tiny was there too, and I'm like, what are y'all doing at my mom's house? Yeah, and mind you, this is before, you know, them cases and allegations and stuff started coming, because I would have been like, Mom, they need to get out. But yeah, awkward. I didn't know what to do. And it's funny because she didn't know who he was. My mom doesn't pay attention to like current music. If it's not Aretha, Patti, Gladys, or something from the gospel world, she's unfamiliar. So she had no idea who he was. And so like they were at the house because, again, the girl, well, she's a woman now, you know, her and her husband had come to visit my mom. And then I guess they lived close by to wherever T.I. and Tiny lived. So they all just came and they just had them a time together. I said, interesting. You know, my mom has lived and she don't even be knowing it. Just be living and she don't even be knowing it. And then she gonna start talking about, you know, he was your size. I was like, what's that supposed to mean? But anyway, getting to the point. So with ComicView, I feel like if you want to go that route, give the opportunity to these up-and-coming comics that, you know, are trying to get on, as opposed to people who are already established. DC Young Fly, T.I. and all of them, they don't need a ComicView, because at this point they can create their own ComicView. They have the means and the following and the connections to do so. So I think, you know, give the platforms to some of these people that we haven't seen, or even even before then, I might even look at some of these internet comedians that have been kind of climbing the ranks. I'd give them a platform, you know, before I give, you know, these major entertainers one. But that's just my opinion. There's also a conversation about nostalgia versus demand. Like, of course we love nostalgia, but what we've seen in the past is they bring back a lot of shows and they don't do well. Because I think you also have to take into consideration that the world changes and the way that we even consume our entertainment shifts and changes. So think about when they tried to bring back TRL and when they tried to bring back 106 in Park. It didn't quite work because people aren't going to sit and watch music videos all day. Or not, I take it back. They're not going to sit and wait to see if their favorite music video made a countdown, because they can just go to YouTube and watch the video right away, right? And then it's just a different day and age. I know Video Soul has made a return on BET Plus. I actually do think that's a good idea. And I think that's a good idea mainly because, again, with trying to discover new artists, especially when we have these conversations about music, and we've always said like there's a lot of really good music out there, but you have to dig through the trenches of the internet to find it. I think by having more platforms that put the music back in the forefront, where it's a little bit more accessible, where, you know, you're just, I don't know, you're cleaning the house and you have the TV on and, oh, this song is nice, okay, what's this? And okay, now there's some new exposure. That kind of element, totally down with. But like I said, the way that things have changed and shifted, even comedy is different, right? You know, you have so many people who've gotten on just with TikTok and Instagram doing their own like homegrown comedy that way and building national platforms. So much has shifted and changed. So I wasn't sure exactly how ComicView is going to really roll out and how it's going to work. We'll see. I'll definitely watch it and support it. And to be honest, look, they got auditions. I might think about it. But yeah, I think it's a great idea. Just hopefully, I hope they give more space to a lot of the more up-and-coming things, or up-and-coming comedians. That's what made it work, especially back then when things were a little bit more regional. Because you have to think, like, going back to like 1999, 2000, 2001, we're not on social media. Things are a bit more regional. So even the humor, like you get a comedian that came out of Memphis, and that kind of humor, you might not hear that kind of humor in a place like Oakland, but you'd be like, that is freaking funny. Okay, I like that dude. And then there'd be somebody from Brooklyn, there'd be somebody from Atlanta, there'd be somebody from Jacksonville, somebody from Mobile, like all these different places where you get to experience their world through their lens of how they see it in the space respective to where they live. That's not really the same case anymore because all of our lives are so interconnected now because of social media, and we're just a bit more connected with music, television, all of it. But we'll see how it goes. But we'll see. I don't know, but we'll follow up. So this next story, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little nervous about, but we'll see how this goes. Hopefully not in my neighborhood. But there's a company called Aleph Aeronautics, and they have been approved by the FAA to start selling a flying car entitled the Model A. It retails for the bargaining price of $300,000, and it flies for a range of about 110 miles. It's an electric vehicle. You know what's crazy? I think all of us have been in a space where we've been stuck in traffic, and we're like, man, if I just had a button that I could push and I could just jet off and go, like I would have that. It's crazy, like especially if you were born between like the 40s and the 80s, maybe even the 90s. Like when the year 2000 came, we all thought we were gonna be living like the Jetsons. Like everybody's gonna be flying cars, everything. It's just gonna be a time. Like we were ready for it, and now they're trying to make it a thing. And I'm like, actually, you know what? I changed my mind. We let's stay on the ground. We don't need to go up no higher because even on the ground, people don't have common sense. So imagine now you want to put them in the air. You want to put them up high. In places where now they have more access to create more havoc. Okay. And so it's crazy. I started thinking, I was like, how does this work? Because even with it, they're saying that in order to drive one, like I guess in addition to having your driver's license, you would just need to get some kind of certification in regards to flying a drone. And that's it. And you're good to go. You just get in it and go. And I'm just like, this is already going to be chaos. I'm thinking of the people that have to teach their kids how to drive and how we all had those horrible experiences behind the wheel when we first started. It's just like, there's too much going on already. Like, how does that work? And what happens if, I don't know, you're flying and you're at that 108 mile mark, right? You only got 3 miles left and you have no more juice and you need to land, but you're over the woods and there's nowhere to land. Like, how does that work? Because you crash into the tree and then hope somebody comes with a broomstick to get you out. Like, I don't know how this is going to work, right? And then I'm thinking, like, because I live up kind of high. I was like, I'm going to be so pissed if I'm watching TV and somebody crashes into my living room. Like, what? I just paid for all this furniture. What you doing? Like, I don't know. And then even DC, right? So DC has a very restricted airspace for obvious reasons, you know, all the federal buildings and the president and the Senate and all that stuff. So there's not even a lot of areas in DC that can even have things fly over. Even when it comes to getting like a drone that you play with, depending on the kind of drone you have to register it. And there's a limitation to how high it can fly. So I'm already picturing like somebody's not going to be paying attention. They gonna fly too high and get shot down. Now everybody got to go out and march. Like it's going to be a whole lot going on. Folks gonna be trying to steal one of these things and they gonna get in the air and not know how to use it. They're gonna crash into a bell tower. Like it's gonna be a time. So I don't know about this one. And then even like, what about when you do like family events, right? I don't know, it's a wedding. You know, you just went to the wedding, it was a great time. The reception is right around the corner. Somebody need a ride because they got there, but they don't got a ride to the reception. And so you try to stuff them in your back seat. So now you got 4 people in the back seat and somebody holding a 3-year-old, and you're trying to take off, but it's too much weight in the back and the things start coming down. Like I'm so good on this one, y'all. Like, I don't know. Like, and really, even when it comes to like maintenance, like you can't even get over no more. Like you can't do the whole thing we do at Jiffy Lube where you tell them, I just want oil. Don't come here with nothing else. I'm just here to get oil. Because Jiffy Lube knows how to get you. Like you go there for just an oil change. And then here they come with that cabin filter that they're holding. You see this filter needs to be changed. You see how dirty it is? The last time I went to Jiffy Lube, I was like, well, y'all just can't like brush it off. Because how much is that again? He was like, oh, it's going to be about $60. $60? How much? But he was like, no, you just got to get a new one. Like, you can't cut corners with maintenance because, you know, who wants to play around in the air? Like, nobody wants to drop. So, and what's the rules? Like, how high can you fly? And is there going to be like an on-air grid that kind of is like a virtual road that you stay on so you're not crashing into buildings or running into commercial airliners? Like, how does this work? I don't know. This is going to be something that's interesting. But I'm just saying, like, we've seen a lot of lessons that need to be learned in the last few months in regard to some of this innovation. Like between that Titan submersive and even Elon Musk with the tunnel he had where, you know, for his Teslas and electric vehicles, they used a special tunnel. But every time somebody get in a wreck, now the tunnel's all blocked off because it ain't got a soft shoulder. You just stuck in there. Like, I don't know. We will see how this goes. But all I'm saying is don't ask me if I want to ride because I don't want to get in. If I'm in my friend's car and they got one of these things, as soon as I hear that button, hold on, let me climb out real quick. Y'all go ahead. Like, I'm just saying, like, you really would not be able to cut and half step on the maintenance. Like, you go to Jiffy Lube and they're like, oh, your thruster's cracked. You certainly aren't going to be like, oh, it's okay, I'll just keep flying. Like, nope. That's going to be a time. Speaking of Jiffy Lube, it's so funny too. They always get an attitude when you don't want to get all the extra add-ons. Like, listen, I came just for oil. Like, my car has been making expensive sounds for 2 years anyway. It's doing just fine. I don't want to leave and end up spending $312 for stuff I didn't ask for. Let me and my car be great. We good. It's paid off. We good, right? But that's gonna be a time. Anyway, and so this next story, I swear it's not supposed to be funny, but I've been laughing at this all day. Again, this is not supposed to be funny, people. But have you seen the clip of the guy who tries to rob the store and then nobody moves? Like, everybody in there is unfazed. Let's go to the clip.
Everybody get down! Give me all the money! It's got the boxes! Give me all the money! Get down! Where's the money? Give me the money! Where's the money? Everybody give me everything! Where's the money? Give me the money.
Okay, so one, I'm glad nobody got hurt and everybody went about their day. But now that I've said that and got that out the way, I don't know. I was telling my friend, I'm like, I'm glad we wasn't in there. We might have got shot because, you know, we find everything funny. We would have busted out laughing, to be honest. And so we don't take nothing serious when it's time to be serious. So, man, I'm glad that everything worked out. But you got to be down bad when, like, you try to rob a spot and nobody moves. Like, my feelings would have been hurt. Like, what? Wait a minute. But at this point, it doesn't make sense because a lot of times people don't even carry cash like that anyway. You know what I mean? Like, you would have went there and did all that and probably left with $72. Okay, that's not even enough for the cable bill. That ain't even enough for the YouTube TV bill if you got that. Like, and what happens with the charges? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if it's robbery because really you didn't get anything, and I really don't even know if it was attempted robbery because nobody was fazed. Like, is that a disturbing the peace charge or does that just drop down to a noise violation? Like, they were like, you can just go on and head back home. Like, not today. I told you that time somebody tried to rob me at DuPont Circle one time. I was still in college. I was doing a summer session. And I had a 2-hour window in between classes, and I think I just left business law, and I was going to another class. For those who went to Howard, you knew business law, that class. If you ever contemplated on just dropping out, business law would be that class, especially if you came out of the School of Communications and had to go to the School of B to take that class. We were not ready. We didn't know what kind of sorcery is this. Like, that class used to have you stressed, okay? There were a few times where I was like, you know what? All right, maybe I'm just going to go back home. This ain't for me. But anyway, I was walking to get some food. Like, I was in between classes. I had a 2-hour window before the next class, and I just remember walking. It's hot. I had my little iPod on. I'm jamming, walking, and there's like this random person that's like, I can kind of see my peripheral that he's kind of on the same route that I'm at. So just walking and walking and walking, and then finally, like, I get to the crosswalk because it's like, you know, the red light. You gotta wait, and the guy taps my shoulder. I'm like, huh? And he's like, oh, I need you to turn your music down. I'm like, what's up? And he's like, I need you to give me everything in your wallet. Now, let me just set the scene. It's June or July or August. It's DC. It's DuPont Circle. There are people walking poodles and people flying kites and people skateboarding and riding tricycles with the baby in the back. Like, it's a tourist area. Folks got their little fanny packs on. I'm sitting here thinking, like, it was like 3 thoughts in my head. I'm like, wait, you tapped on my shoulder and asked me to turn my music down so you can rob me. I was like, okay, them dots ain't connecting for this person. And then, two, if you think you about to rob me out here in front of all these tourists and all that, absolutely not. And then, so I knew like something was a little off with him. And I was like, you know, maybe next time I got somewhere to go. So I just walked off and he did not follow me anymore. Now, listen. Had it been another section of town, you know, had we been somewhere northeast or something, you know, had we just been a little bit further down Georgia Ave, I would have gave him the wallet, like, here, take it. But I knew, I was like, something ain't right with this. Well, you leave me alone. Like, and I was going through enough. That summer session was kicking my behind. I might have fought for my life that day because I was like, this is not the time. Leave me alone. I just need something to eat to make it through this freaking class. Talking about I need you to turn your music down. Do you really need me to? That was a wild day there. But, interesting. I know he felt stupid. And then the part that got me too, remember he tells that one lady, give me, you know, your wallet. She's like, I don't have anything. And then she already just walks out the door like, okay. And then when he was leaving, he gonna go back to her a second time. Like, all of a sudden there was gonna be more money that appeared on her wallet. She's like, I said I ain't got nothing. Like, sir, just go home. Go home. Like, man. And I hope he didn't have no friends in the getaway car waiting. Like, imagine him getting to the getaway car. All right, what did you get? They ain't had nothing. Like, he would have had to walk. Get out. Go. Anyway, so I want to jump into this Tulsa decision, so I'm going to read the article first, and then we're going to have a discussion. An Oklahoma judge dismissed the reparations lawsuit filed by the last 3 known survivors of the Tulsa race massacre on Friday, court records show. The 3 had been locked in a years-long court battle against the city of Tulsa and other groups and officials over the opportunities taken from them when the city's Greenwood neighborhood was burned to the ground in 1921. Contemporary reports of deaths began at 36, but historians now believe as many as 300 people may have died, according to the Tulsa Historical Society and Museum. Thousands were left homeless. Leslie Benningfield Randall, 108, Viola Fletcher, 109, and her brother, Hughes Van Ellis, 102, were among the plaintiffs, CNN previously reported. The plaintiffs had argued that the damage inflicted during the massacre was a public nuisance from the start and were seeking relief from that nuisance as well as to recover for unjust enrichment others have gained from the exploitation of the massacre. Cornell's Legal Information Institute defines a public nuisance as when a person or entity unreasonably interferes with a right that the general public shares in common. However, the city of Tulsa requested that the lawsuit be dismissed with prejudice against refiling, arguing in part that simply being connected to a historical event does not provide a person with unlimited rights to seek compensation from any project in any way relating to that historical event. If that were the case, every person connected to any historical event could make similar unjust enrichment claims against every museum or point of remembrance, the city claimed. Judge Carolyn Wall on Friday found that upon hearing the arguments of counsel and considering the briefs filed by counsel for plaintiffs and counsel for defendants, the plaintiffs' Second Amendment petition should and shall be dismissed with prejudice, court records show. Ike Howard, grandson of Viola Fletcher, said he was angry about the ruling. They were blighted and once again had not made whole, Howard said. We will still remain blighted. We wish the Department of Justice would investigate. How can we get justice in the same city that created the nuisance? Is justice only for the rich? Family attorneys are expected to address the possibility of an appeal. Family members for Randall could not immediately be contacted. Ed Mitson, who made a private $1 million donation to the 3 survivors, told CNN on Saturday, the Oklahoma state government should be ashamed of itself for not doing right by these 3 wonderful people, one of whom fought for this country in World War II. Fletcher was 7 years old when a violent white mob targeted black residents and destroyed her community's thriving black economic hub. My life was taken from me, Van Ellis previously said as he reflected on his family fleeing Greenwood when he was only a few months old. He previously told CNN his family and other survivors left their homes and opportunities behind. I lost 102 years. I don't want nobody else to lose that, Van Ellis said. So you know what I really find interesting? When you think to every time there's a conversation around slavery and how can black people be made whole collectively, a lot of times you always get so much kickback and you hear a lot of the same talking points. But one of the main talking points is always, well, you weren't there, so how can you sit here and be mad about something you weren't there to experience? Or they'll flip it and say, well, I wasn't there. I didn't do it. Why should my tax dollars pay reparations for something that happened hundreds of years ago? And then they go through all the talking points. It's almost like there's a vending machine they go to and they just push different buttons and there's a whole selection of talking points that they can use. So then you start hearing, well, it's not about the past. It's about the future. And when you spend too much time in the past, you'll never make it to the future because you've complicated your present. It's not about where you've been, but where you're going and how do you move forward. And that's one of the things. How can we just have a dialogue and a conversation and move forward? They want to just move forward. They don't want to talk about how to make nobody whole, but we're going to move forward. And this is divisive. Or they might say this is divisive. Depends on how their accent works. And so they got all these different standpoints. And, I just think we need to move on. And when we spend too much time harping on what was, we'll never get to what is and what can be. And so they got all these different phrases. And long story short, the goalpost moves and everybody wants to fight you and they think you're crazy. And it doesn't matter even when you bring up conversations around policy and you can bring out numbers and facts and showcase how all of these different atrocities in the past correlate to what's happening today in regards to the money and the generational wealth that's accumulated and the punitive policy. We'd be here all day, but they will fight you tooth and nail. Now here we have a case where there are people who were around for a specific offense. The offense was the Tulsa massacre, where you had all of these people get their homes burned down, folks shot, killed, lynched, burned, stabbed, and all of the terrible atrocities that take place. And you have people who were actually there for it. And now the conversation is, well, if we allow people to just sue for any atrocity that took place in the past, everybody would be suing. We'd be suing all day. So now that's where the goalpost has moved. And if you remember, I've said this before. I said this on the last live. When it comes to race, precedence is never set, especially when it comes to black folks. The goalpost is going to move every time. So the fact that they won't even allow this to go to trial should tell you something, right? And not only that, it's like they dismiss it, but then they also dismiss it with prejudice, saying, you know, we're going to make sure that in addition to dismissing the case, we're not even going to allow you to refile it. It will never be on the docket again. That's the end of that, all said and done. And as a side note, understand that the judge that dismissed this case is a judge that was elected. This is why I say it's not the time to tap out politically just because you haven't been getting your way. There's a lot of folks out here spreading some really backwards information, telling folks to just sit out, stay home, you know, teach this party a lesson about. Understand, we ain't got time for your egos right now. There's too much stuff going on. You have watched affirmative action get stripped. You've watched all these different things take place, but folks want to still sit in their ego because they want to hold on to a talking point, because they want to hold on to the idea of being right and get into the space where they can say, I told you so. I don't have that kind of time and energy. Too much going on. So folks are going to have to get out of their ego and understand that politics in the United States is not a one-size-fits-all, end-all, be-all game. It is an ongoing battle that never tires, because no matter what happens, anytime you think you've made an inch, they're going to find a way to cut you back 2 miles. And that's what's been happening. That's why you're seeing all this policy get stripped back and stripped away. Don't even get me started on Florida. But anyway, getting to the main point of all this, I think one of the things you also have to think about is understanding that by them saying that this is not even worth going to trial, what they're trying to do is ensure that you don't have additional conversations take place from all of these other cities that had similar massacres. Because understand, we know Tulsa wasn't the only one. You had dozens that took place, and you have some that aren't even technically documented. But even as late as the 1960s, we were still having race massacres. And so you have Detroit, you have Atlanta, you have New Orleans, you have Lafayette, you have Slocum, you have East St. Louis, you have Rosewood, like city after city after city after city. And so understand, I think the fear that exists is if they were able to be successful with Tulsa, that means other cities, other residents, other people who are victims and relatives of people who have been, you know, on the receiving end of the atrocities that took place in all of these cities. Now all of these people also have a claim, because really when you want to talk about it, the reason why most of these people have a claim is because all of these massacres were sanctioned by the state and local governments. The state and local governments allowed them to happen. A lot of times the police, who were supposed to be there to protect, actually were a part of the violence. All right, so going into Tulsa, and I'm not going to go 100% into Tulsa because I've done so many videos on Tulsa. Just type in Calvin Michaels and type in Tulsa and pick a video, or Tulsa and pick a video. And so, but going back to the atrocities, because I think one of the things that happens is, as time progresses, I think sometimes people think that time kind of softens the blow, as if it's a buffer to the atrocities that took place, and oh, it wasn't too bad. So it's like, no, you need to live in that moment and understand that this was the reality for a lot of people. So when we go back to something like Tulsa, right? Again, something sanctioned by the city. You have to understand that the very first time a city had been air bombed, as far as a bomb falling from some kind of flying device, whether it be a helicopter or a plane, the first time a bomb was dropped in the United States from some kind of flying device was in Tulsa. The city bombed its own people, right? They decided to bomb the Greenwood neighborhood of Tulsa. That's the black side of town. Understand, you also had a space where pretty much every white male in the city was deputized. When I say deputized, that means they were given permission to have the same jurisdiction and authoritative rights as the police. So pretty much every white male in Tulsa became the police during that massacre. And whether they were able-bodied or not, even if they were in a wheelchair and had one leg, they had a right to go and shoot up black people, do whatever they wanted to do. So as you saw houses get burned, people get lynched, people get stabbed, people get shot, you know, everybody was allowed to participate, because again, there was a common mission that was, again, sanctioned by the city. Oh, we must go and regulate all of the nonsense that's taking place with those people, because again, they try to make some claim about some woman being attacked in the elevator, and all right, well, that means we got to get rid of everybody and everything. And really, it was a conversation about resentment that I'm going to get to in a second. But understand, with Tulsa, when you're talking about the atrocities that took place, 1,200 homes burned down. People lost their businesses, lost their livelihood, everything gone. And also understand, this is before black people could even get insurance. So there was no such thing as calling, you know, Mutual of Omaha or the Liberty Mutual or whoever you call it, State Farm, wherever, to go and, hey, they burned my house down, can I get some money? No, it wasn't for us. They weren't getting none of that, okay? And so there's that. You had 35 city blocks burned down. So like we said, the libraries, grocery stores, banks, salons, everything you can think of burned down. Okay, it was to the point where they had a man where they chopped his ear off and made him eat it. That's how vicious and vile this attack was, right? $37 million in damage. And then, as insult to injury, those who were able to make it out alive and escape to safety were then all arrested and detained and put on state fairgrounds, almost like their own version of a concentration camp. So similar to what the United States did to those in the Asian community in the 1940s, that's what they did to the black survivors of Tulsa. Had all these people locked up, right? Locked up. And then it gets worse, because then what happens when this is all said and done? Tulsa decides to change their zoning laws and their fire codes, and it created a space where pretty much the majority of Greenwood would not be eligible to be reconstructed. They changed the rules. Now you can't build this back. So not only are we going to burn down what you had, not only did your relatives get shot and killed and murdered and everything else, but you can't even rebuild what it is you worked for. It's the end of that. You need to go and set up shop somewhere else, because it's not going to be here. And to ensure that that was also locked in, what was the next phase that came in? Interstate freeway system. Then they built a freeway over what was left. You know what I mean? Like, this is the nonsense that we're talking about. And so when people sit here and try to say, oh, you know, it wasn't that bad, or people were just kind of in their mind. No, this was some crazy mess. Like, this was some wild, out of pocket kind of nonsense. And the other thing to understand, even when it came to the death toll, they will never even have the accurate amount of people who were killed, because those who were killed, they didn't even give them the decency of a proper burial or proper documentation, and some of these people didn't even have a death certificate. That's why when this initially happened, what's so interesting is when you saw the initial media reports from the newspapers, it was reported, hey, 2 whites were killed in a race attack or a race mob. You know, it was a race riot with some blacks and some whites, and 2 white people were killed. They didn't even talk about the black people that died. And then in reality, it turns out, okay, they say, okay, 36 black people were killed. And then we fast forward, and as you get into more history and documentation and research, it's like, no, it was way more than 36. It's more likely upwards of 300. But we can't even confirm that, because, again, there were so many elements that were never confirmed and followed up on, because, again, they didn't even see the value in the people that were killed. It was like, oh, too bad for them. So on. Let's keep it moving. Burn it down. Bulldoze over it. Build on top of it. Build a freeway. And now we got a shopping mall. Boom, that's America, freedom. And so, like, that's the kind of nonsense that we deal with. But understand that what happened in Tulsa was not even an isolated incident. Like, people try to present Tulsa as like this one-time thing that took place, even, you know, a year or two back when it was the 100th anniversary, and they were, you know, doing all the specials in memory of. They kind of talked about it like it was the only one that happened. Understand that the climate in the United States at that point in time was very vile. A lot of resentment against black Americans. And so we saw so many cities have these massacres. And so since it's July, let's talk about one of the massacres that took place in July. So we're going to travel to East St. Louis. So all right, kids, get your notes and your pencils out. We're going to take notes and have another study session. So here we go. So let's travel back to 1916. Now, this actual massacre would take place in 1917, but you know, I got to give some backstory, okay? You know, I got to build it up to break it back down. And so, 1916 in the United States, there was a lot going on. You have World War I, right? So we got a lot of troops all over in Europe right now fighting and getting shot at in the trenches. So you have that happening. You have the Great Migration. And I'm not talking about the people coming to Ellis Island and what you saw on Schoolhouse Rocks with the lovely Lady Liberty. Not that. I'm talking about the Black Great Migration, where you had a lot of black individuals that lived in the South, and now they're moving up north and moving to the Midwest for opportunities and jobs, in addition to the fact that a lot of them were tired of the nonsense that was happening down south. So you have that happening, right? In addition, you also have the implementation of what you would start to see as redlining, right? 1910, Baltimore has that first ordinance and that covenant saying these folks can't live here for this various reason. All the cities around the country are now following the same model and coming up with new covenants and ordinances. And fast forward some years, now we'll get to the part where they get left out of the FHA programs as well. So you have that. Then you also have what you would start to call the creation of whiteness. Okay, understand that around this time and back, a lot of people still identified with the nationality of where their parents were from when their parents had immigrated. So a lot of people, like, you still had white folks who had been, you know, 2 or 3 or 4 generations in the United States at some point, but you had a lot who had come from different countries, right? So you had a lot of people who did not identify as white. They still saw themselves as Italian or British or Polish or Swedish or Swiss or Dutch or Austrian or German or French or you know, from all these different, Irish, you know, Greek. I don't think too many people from Greece were coming over here like that, but you know, all these different places, Portuguese, Spanish, like they were coming from all these different places. They identified as those different localities. They didn't see themselves as white. But what ended up happening is, as we started to have the competition for jobs, and they recognized that, hey, if me and all of my friends who are Austrian, there's not enough of us to really have any political power, especially in the conversation of worker and labor unions, because there's just not enough of us. But hey, So we're from Austria. Hey, you people over here from Belgium, y'all want to get together and then we kind of become like a club of people who can work together? Okay, great. So it's the Belgium and Austrian connection. Cool, but dang, we ain't really got enough because they still got a whole lot of black folks on this other side. And they keep coming up here because at this point, by the time you fast forward to 1917, there were 2,000 black families moving to St. Louis a week. So hey, the numbers aren't high enough, and so we need to add some more people. Say, hey, you people that are German, y'all want to come and join our club too? And then, as a matter of fact, go ahead and call up the Italians and call up the British. I know we don't like the Italians like that because you know them Southern Europeans got that olive skin. They don't be looking right, so we don't deal with them. But we can include them in this, and then okay, let's bring in the Portuguese, and before you know it, all of these representatives from these different countries get together and they decide we're going to be white. So we're all American, but instead of me being Italian American or German American or Polish American, we're white. So here comes the idea of white. And the reason they all recognize that if they can jump into the box of being white, that means they have more power in number against those blacks that are coming in. And so when you get to a place like East St. Louis or a place like St. Louis, black people at that point in time, by the time we get to about 1917, make up 1/6 of the population. So the town at that point was about 60,000 people, 10,000 of them were black. And a lot of them had come between the years of 1910 and 1917. It's interesting about that 1910 conversation because, again, remember, Baltimore 1910, here comes the covenants and the ordinances. The other cities are following suit. So you have that aspect, right? And then in addition to that, the fifth thing is you have the Klan growing at a massive rate because, hey, guess what happened in 1915? The release of Birth of a Nation, right? Which even would stir the conversation of creating whiteness and stir the conversation of anti-blackness and stir the tension that was already there. So there's all this tension in the atmosphere. And on top of that, there's resentment. People can't stand to see black people having a piece of anything. And so when we go back to 1916, right? So St. Louis, there is a meat packing plant, and the staff are like, you know, we had enough of this nonsense. We don't like how we're being treated because now, hey, we got our new union. We are going on strike. Strike. We ain't working, right? And so 2,500 white men go on strike. Now, the people in charge of these companies were like, oh, y'all want to strike, huh? Okay, well, we'll just go get some black people to do your jobs. Because, hey, they've been recruiting black families out of the South for the last few years. Y'all come on up here. It's great. You know, it's still going to be racist, but it won't be as bad. So come on up here. It's going to be a few tornadoes every now and then, but it's going to be great. Come on up here. We got good jobs up here. Some good jobs. I know you're tired of picking tobacco and cotton, so come up in here and work in the factories instead. Come to the meat packing plant. This is the future. This is the American dream that you want. Come on up. So, hey, black people are coming up. So what happens is they have this strike, right? They have this strike. Finally, the strike is over. So the 2,500 people are ready to go back to work. But, hey, only 1,700 of y'all still got jobs because we gave the other 800 to these black folks. And we were able to get away with paying them less because they were happy just to be in the room. And so now there's more resentment. So it's the conversation of these people. They're taking our jobs. They're taking everything. They're taking the city over. And listen, Klan membership's still going up. Every time somebody get mad, another person join the Klan. And so now we get to 1917. And mind you, there have been all of these different little race massacres and movements and different disturbances and everything else that have been taking place all over the country. So tension has been slowly building, right? We get to 1917, all right? There's a place called the Aluminum Ore Company, and they have a strike as well. And so the owners of the company say, oh, y'all want to strike? Okay, go ahead and strike. Hey, Darnell, all y'all come on up here. Come on, Greg, Big Little Jim, all y'all come on up. And so, hey, same thing happens, okay? They give black people the jobs of those who were out there striking and everything. And so, again, for the black folks, it's like, well, y'all weren't letting us in your union anyway, so why should we care about whether or not you have a job? Because you purposely unionized so we couldn't have a job. You purposely unionized so we couldn't have better wages. You purposely unionized so that you all can have all these great benefits for yourselves, but it would not trickle down to us because we're not a part of that same conversation. So, yeah, we're going to take care of our families and do our thing. Y'all go ahead and strike if you want to and everything else like that. And so you have that happening. In addition to the fact, as you have a lot of men who are returning from war all broken up, right? You know, they got all kind of conditions and crazy PTSD, especially those who had been in the trenches and were shell shocked. Like, it was a lot going on. So a lot of white men could not work when they got back. They just had too much going on. And so a lot was happening. So then there is this big town hall meeting in May of 1917, May 28th. And there's a lot of tension at this meeting. And then at this point, a lot of the white men are frustrated. So they're trying to, you know, stir up the base of all these angry white men who are pissed off. And, you know, those black people out here ruining everything. And they're talking to our women. You know, they always going to throw the white woman in there. Somebody had talked to Stacy. So, absolutely not. So, there's all of this tension. So, after that meeting, what ends up happening is there's a lot of random isolated incidents for the entire month of June on the black side of town, because remember when we talked about redlining, at this point East St. Louis is the black section of town, right? And there are certain segments of town that black people are only allowed to live in. So it's not like there's a situation where black people have swarmed in and took over everything. No, they came and went to their selective pockets that they were allowed to live in and thrive in, and that's it. So white people still had everything that they wanted, but no, they started going and showing up to the black sides of town. This is when they're throwing bricks through windows. They might shoot somebody's window out. They might put a burning cross on the yard. They might kill somebody's dog. They all kind of crazy stuff. And so there kept being all these different instances. So then we get to July 1st of 1917. And so there is this Ford T model that goes into the black side of town, shoots at a group of black people. The black folks on that side of town are like, you know what? They've been trying us all month. We're tired of trying to be peaceful. So you know what? Let's load up. We're going to get our guns and our stuff. And if anybody else comes out here trying to shoot at us, they're going to catch it. So then in comes another Ford model. Now this is where the story gets a little sketchy, because some people believe it was the same car. Some people believe it was a different one. Some people believe it was kind of something purposely set up just to stir up everything. But another Ford comes, and this Ford gets shot up, right? Because the first Ford that came went and shot up at the group of people. So here comes the second Ford, looks exactly the same, and people are feeling like, okay, there's some kind of threat here. So the residents of the area, these are the black residents, shoot at the Ford vehicle. The car drives off, and in that car there was a journalist, there was a driver, and there were two police officers. One of the police officers ends up dying. So now this stirs up the rage on the white side of town. Oh my God, no they didn't, right? And so even the car, white men are flocking just to go see the car so they can see the bloody, and it's just enraging them. So they're going and loading up and getting everything. And so in comes July 2nd, right? July 2nd takes place. And when you want to talk about just absolute violence, you have this mob of thousands of people show up to the black side of town. See, the difference between this one and Tulsa was with Tulsa, initially it was a few hundred white men that showed up, and then it grew to thousands once they found out that some of the black folks were fighting back. And then that's when they started to deputize, and it became a bigger mob that went and attacked all these black people. But as far as East St. Louis, they came in with the wall. They came in with the wave ready, right? And so you have thousands of white men and women. It wasn't just men. A lot of times with this narrative, it's like, oh, if the men did it all and the women just stayed and watched the children. No, the women were out there in the trenches as well, doing all the foolery. And some of them brought their kids and their teenagers to be a part of the nonsense. And when I tell you, this mob was just inherently violent, just vengeful, okay? Because it wasn't even really about that random officer that died. To them, this was, these are the people that are taking our jobs. These are the people that are moving into the area. We don't want them here. These people are inherently violent. They're talking to our women and everything else like that. They're changing our way of life. And again, a lot of them are also mad because, hey, they're coming back shell-shocked from the war. They're not getting the right benefits and everything else like that. A lot of things are not great on their side of the spectrum in regards to how they see the world. On top of, you have, again, everybody joining the Klan. And so here comes all the language. And, you know, these are the people that are ruining everything in America. So there's all of this vengeance already there. Like, they're pissed. And then the fact that, okay, these black people shot at one of us. Oh, we got to get all of them out because we can't trust any of them. So they go in all of the black pockets of town, because understand the way that East St. Louis was redlined, it wasn't just one segment of the black town, or the one segment of the town wasn't just black. There were different pockets. And so they went to all of the pockets. And so they go. They burn down everything. They shoot up everybody. It's to the point where they even cut holes in the fire hoses so the fire department couldn't put any of the fires out. All right. They lynched people. People that were trying to run out of the burning buildings were shot. White women went to the streetcars and pulled black women out who were trying to escape. Attacked them. Attacked the children. Children were killed. Folks were lynched. Like, they were not playing any games. They came out there just straight up violence. There's not even a lot of pictures from this massacre because they were attacking the photographers as well because they didn't trust them. And then one of the worst parts is the police allowed it to happen. I actually want to read one of the quotes I was able to find from the Dispatch. And this is coming from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. It says, all of the impartial witnesses agree that the police were either indifferent or encouraged the barbarities, and that the major part of the National Guard was indifferent or inactive. No organized effort was made to protect the Negroes or disperse the murdering groups. The lack of frenzy and of large infuriated mob made the task easy. 10 determined officers could have prevented most of the outrages. 100 men acting with authority and vigor might have prevented any outrage. And to make it worse, some of the police actually were participating in the mob. So it only got crazier. A lot of the black residents had to flee and run for their lives. And so many of them fled and tried to run across the bridge. Some of them were stopped at the bridge and even lynched on the bridge. Some made it to the banks of the river. They made makeshift rafts, got in the water, and floated across to safety. They did whatever they could do. And so according to Robert Archibald of the Missouri History Museum, hundreds of black people were killed during this massacre. Like, it was just absolutely crazy. Hundreds had died. And when it was all said and done, you had 6,000 black people who were now homeless. All right? 6,000 who lost everything, had nowhere to go. And then what was crazy when it was all said and done, when it finally came time for people to be charged with the atrocities, more black people were charged with the massacre than the actual white people who committed it. So you had about 25 black people who were charged, and you had 10 white folks who were charged. Like, that's what ended up happening, or as far as being convicted. And so absolutely crazy. And again, that's just one place. And when you talk about the origins of what stirred all that up, a lot of it, again, envy, rage, the idea of wanting to be in an authoritative disposition over another group of people, and just going and pretty much pushing your way through violence. And so understand that what you saw happen in East St. Louis happened all around the country. And there are so many stories that will never be told because a lot of the history was buried. And so you're seeing it even with this. Understand that the reason why you're getting so much kickback and why you see things like, oh, the anti-CRT movement, and they can't talk about this in the schools, and you see what's happening in Florida and different states where they're banning books and getting rid of diversity, this, and everything is just, it's a whirlwind of chaos. Because the idea is, if you can cut the pipeline to the access of information and the access to education on things of the past, hopefully with, time, generations will die out and forget about how their people collectively have been oppressed or have been ostracized or been in predicaments where the state worked against them in their own favor. It's the same thing I talked about on the last live, where I said the one claim that black people have over everybody in this country in regards to the conversations around being disenfranchised is there's policy backing the nonsense that happened to us. Right? Things are documented. Everything was sanctioned. When you go, again, to the covenants, the ordinances, you look at the archives and see what the laws were, things were specifically line itemed and written saying, black people can't do this. This is not for blacks. Black people can't live here. When you look and you talk about these massacres, you can go and see there's a history of the police departments purposely saying, well, we're not going to help because, as a matter of fact, we're going to be a part of this mob. And so watching sanctioned riots and massacres of black people happen all across the country went on for decades and decades and decades. And that's why it's so interesting to see a judge try to dismiss this and act like, oh, well, it's y'all just doing the most. Because she understands that opening that can of worms is you're gonna have to open, it's not even a can at this point, it's a whole freaking shed full of worms, all kind of stuff you're gonna have to make right with. And so yeah, people are going to fight and claw to kind of shut all that down because they want generations to die out so that they can stop making their claims. And that's what you're seeing right now. And so they're going at it from so many different aspects. And again, all elements of blackness, in my opinion, right now in this country are under some kind of form of somebody trying to either attack or regulate or decimate and kind of put us in a position where we just shut up and be grateful that we're here. That's the energy in the United States. So when I say it's not the time to tap out, this is what I mean. The fact that you can see what happened in Tulsa and then dismiss it and just say, oh, so be it, y'all gotta move on. But understand, Tulsa ain't the only one. Again, we can talk about Atlanta, we can talk about Rosewood, we can talk about all of these different cities and everything that took place. And so it's far from over. But understand that, yeah, there's a lot of shenanigans going here. So we will see what happens with that case. I don't know if the Department of Justice wants to look into things, but understand so many of our agencies are so compromised and just inactive with a lot of things. You don't know what to look forward to. But man, just understand, the history in this country is off the chain. Like, every day, the more I read, the more enraged I get. So I have to counterbalance and find other avenues of euphoria and contentment so that I'm not somebody who's like a walking time bomb, you know what I mean, or a ticking time bomb. Anyway, all right, and then 3 quick topics I'm going to kind of zip through. One of them I'm actually going to talk about a little bit more extensively on my next live, and that is the one around the new lawsuit surrounding legacy admissions. So we've seen what's happened with the conversation around affirmative action and college admissions in regard to race, and now there's a conversation of legacy admissions because folks are like, okay, well, you want to sit here and change the rules, and let's talk about fairness all across the board. So it will be interesting to see what happens in regard to that, because one of the biggest things I'll say with legacy, because a lot of folks are saying, well, you guys are looking at it wrong. Not every person, that's legacy is rich. It's not always that, but I say in regard to that, understand that even a conversation of legacy for white American families, there's still an advantage because, again, black folks can't even go to majority institutions until after 54. And so, again, for a lot of black folks, there's no such thing as being 3 and 4 generations into a university that's not an HBCU. There's no such thing as, oh, you know, my great-great-great-great-grandfather went to University of Michigan and so on. There's no such thing as that. You know what I mean? And so I think there's going to be a deeper conversation in regard to how legacy operates because, again, when you had an entire collective that was locked out, okay, other groups were able to build a different caliber of legacy than the groups that are now allowed to just now get in. Okay, so that will be a very interesting conversation. I'll go a little bit deeper on the next live on that one because I want to have my actual numbers and stuff. But I had to remind myself this isn't in the news and not a live. And you know when I do the lives, we be on there for like 5 days. And so these are supposed to be shorter than the lives. And I know that at this point this video is getting close to an hour, if not. And then as far as these people who keep randomly throwing things at these artists as they're performing on stage, I'm not sure what the end goal is, but a lot of y'all really be trying it. And I can't wait for one of these artists to make an example out of one of y'all because we've seen so many different random artists be attacked while they're performing. Like, you know, you saw the one lady who got hit in the face with the phone, had to pretty much stop her show because she had to get stitches and everything in her eye. You just saw the people throw something at Harry Styles. You saw the people throw the phone at Drake. You saw the people try to throw something at Remy Ma. You saw the people try to throw something at Glorilla. Like, what are y'all doing? Like, understand, I think it's stupid to spend money to go to a concert and then you attack the artist while they're on the stage. Because a lot of times these shows are already expensive. So why? I can't wait to see somebody be made an example out of. Like, I'm just saying, I wish I would have been at that Janet Jackson show and I would have saw somebody throw anything at her on that stage. Like, what? All the money I done paid to see this show, y'all not about to ruin this for me. You better, man. Security. Like crazy. And you know, like these artists deal with a lot on tour anyway. Touring is a very, very expensive endeavor, especially if things go wrong. Like when an artist gets hurt on a tour, sometimes the insurance claims fall through and they're like, we're not going to cover this, and now they have to pay out of pocket the promoter and make up for whatever has happened. Like we've seen so many situations where artists go on tour and end up in the hole. So like when an artist has decided to go on the road, yes, it's for them to kind of get their money up, but it's also for them to connect with fans and give people what they pay for. So don't mess it up for everybody else because you want to be a freaking idiot. If you don't like the artist, just stay home. You don't gotta go, right? You ain't gotta go. My goodness. I do want to close with this. This is coming out of Charleston, South Carolina. So the International African American Museum has now opened, and from what I've read, it is a 150,000 square foot space, and they have all kind of like interactive exhibits. There's a whole lot of things that take place there. They have, let me see here, more than 150 historical objects and 30 works of art. One of the museum's exhibits will also rotate 2 to 3 times a year. It's a $120 million facility, so if you are in Charleston, definitely check it out. If you've been there, please tell me in the comments how it was. At some point, I will find my way there, but I think that's a really, really cool thing, especially in this era where everybody's trying to silence history and try to change the narrative and act like everything has just been fine and dandy. Like, I've seen so many stupid stories and conversations. I saw that stupid quote Michelle Bachmann was trying to say about slavery, and I'm like, Michelle, that's why you're not in politics anymore now, because you were loony and people got you up out of there. I saw the clip of that stupid pastor who, again, that's going to be a good conversation for my live as well, who, again, tried to restructure the narrative around slavery. And I'm like, y'all, oh, some of y'all are just horrible people. You're just horrible. Horrible. Anyway, moving on, I'm going to wrap it up, but like I said, stay safe this summer. Find something that gives you elements of prosperity and happiness to get into, because the world is crazy, and I think if we spend too much time harping on all the bad, we're all going to lose our minds. So find, something to get into, and like I said, mind your business so that you can age well. Anyway, I'm out. Sherry 2 cents, subscribe.
Driving through the mountains, facing the road in every state, coaching my teams, you were the pilot, meant to correct all my mistakes. And with age you were enchanted, graduating made you proud. But I sometimes play your voicemail just to remember how you sound.